earlier you sang that hook and fuck, that was dope, man. That was dope.
We were chilling in the park, just waiting for the sun to go down. Dun, dun. It was me, Shiro, and the homies, a lighter shade of brown.
Everybody, round of applause, please. Everyone.
Thank you.
No auto-tone. Okay?
No auto-tone.
Yes. That was so awesome. You're actually the first person on here who's ever done something like that.
Oh, see? First for everything, you know what I'm saying?
And popped.
Be a first.
And that popped. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that was dope.
Hi.
Hey. So, before the commercial, I had asked you about Bobby and... so now, on a serious note, when did you first hear, or where were you when you first heard of Bobby's passing away?
I was actually at my family's house, which is one of my cousins, and I got a call from Roadium, Robert of a Lighter Shaded Brown, and he called me and he said, it's not looking too good. Bobby is in the hospital, and he's been in here actually for over a week. They didn't know who he was. He was classified as a John Doe because he did not have his ID or anything on him. No one knew who he was. But fortunately, what ended up happening was one of the nurses felt like there was something special about him. It was something different about him. He had a cell phone on him, but there was no battery charge. So what they did was the nurse had said to herself, you know what? I think we need to charge his phone and see if we can get in contact with some of his family members, because there's just something about him that just seems different. So they charged his phone. The first person they called was his mother, because that was one of the calls. That was one of the last calls he had made. And he was in Vegas. He was actually on vacation with his, at that time, girlfriend and her daughter. And they had ended up getting into it for some reason. And he was on the strip, from what I understand, and they got into it, and he ended up going to get some alcohol and was trying to shake it off or whatever. But he ended up over drinking. And we had, episodes like that with him before, where he would overdrink and kind of pass out. Well, he ended up passing out on the sidewalk in Vegas. And what ended up happening was, you know how hot it is in Vegas. The heat actually gave him heat stroke and kind of boiled his brain pretty much. And they picked him up on the sidewalk. Someone called and said, hey, there's a guy that's on the side of this building. He's passed out. They picked him up, took him to the hospital, and that's where the nurse comes in, and, the whole story about her saying he has a phone on him. Let's charge the phone. They called his mother. The mother got the call, and then they called the brothers, and then they called ODM, and then ODM calls me. And then one of our dearest friends, Tanya Estrada, flew me out to Vegas, and I was able to see Bobby, and he was in a coma, and it was a sight to see. They said the first couple of days his face was swollen and everything, so I didn't get to see that part, but I did get to see, of course, some of the effects of what the sun had did to his skin. And, his head was a little bit swollen, but not as swollen as they said it was prior to me seeing him. But he was just laying in the bed. And then, I was speaking to him. We prayed, and then we all kind of waited around, and then we said our goodbyes, pretty much. Then we announced it to the media.
Okay. Before that, was he living in Vegas at the time?
No.
So he was just out there visiting? Or?
Yeah, he was just visiting. He was supposed to be on vacation with his girlfriend and her daughter. Okay. And they went out there, and they were just going to be there for a couple of weeks. But again, they got into it, and then they ended up parting ways, him and his girlfriend. Okay. So she ended up leaving him in Vegas and taking her daughter and just going wherever she wanted to go. And he had no money, no more money. He calls one of his friends. They pick him up, and then they give him money and go get him alcohol. And then from what I understand from the friend that picked him up, Bobby said that he wanted to go where Tupac died. And that's where he dropped him off. And he was thinking, oh, it's a joke. It's a joke. Bobby's not serious or whatever. But, what are you doing? What are you going to do? He was questioning him. He was like, man, just take me where Tupac died. Right. So he said he took him there and he just dropped him off on the corner. And then that was all she wrote.
Right.
We got the news.
Now, how true, or if you can fill in these blanks, because there's people that were saying, and again, this is all social media stuff, that supposedly he was out there for a couple of days before they picked him up. As far as you said, he had a heat stroke.
Yeah.
Somebody has said that he was out there on the street for 3 days. Is there any truth to that?
I have never heard anything about 3 days.
Okay.
From what I've heard it was overnight.
Okay.
Yes, overnight. Because you know how in Vegas, people are partying. They let you drink on the streets. Everybody's walking the streets. There are events that are happening. The streets that, at some point are always crowded. So people that are, knocked out on the street, they don't really pay much attention to them because everybody parties on the streets of Vegas. So nobody's really paying attention to the fact that someone could really be sick or there could be something really wrong. They're just thinking this person is just drunk or whatever. But he literally collapsed, and him collapsing knocked him out on the cement. So he was knocked out. So he couldn't even wake himself up, even if he were to sober up, because he had already hit his head. But no one was really paying attention to that. So with dealing with that in the heat, and then the morning comes, he's still laying out there. And then the sun kind of just boils him because it's hot.
Yeah.
And then somebody said, okay, listen, I think we need to call someone because this person is not moving. They're not getting up. They're not. And then that's when they put him in the ambulance and took him to the.
So he was in the hospital for how many days was he in the hospital for?
From what I understand, it was at least a week or so. And they had just classified him as a John Doe. Because no one knew who he was. Again, he didn't have an ID. He didn't have any identification on him. The only thing he had was his cell phone, and his cell phone was not even charged. They started looking in his clothes, like trying to figure out, who is this person? And the cell phone was there the whole week, but they didn't think to charge the phone. And then the nurse then said, why don't we try to charge the phone and see if there's something?
Right.
He has a phone in his belongings. Let's do that. And thank God that she did do that, because she was then able to reach his mother. And that brought us all to the understanding of what just occurred with Bobby at that point.
Okay. It's funny because I had seen, I've known Bobby for a long time, but towards, if you will, leading up to that, I had seen pictures of him and he didn't look well.
No.
He didn't look well. Was he going through health issues at all?
He was. He struggled with a lot of, he was an alcoholic. He would tell you himself. If he were here today, he would tell you himself. He struggled a lot with alcoholism. Bobby and I were really, really, really close. That was my brother. We would have a lot of private conversations. He valued my opinion. He would ask me about certain things. What did he think you should do? A lot of phone calls. I did receive a lot of phone calls when he was intoxicated and couldn't do a show. There were times where he would be out of town and he would be so intoxicated. He would call me and he would say, what do you think I should do? I can't make it. I can't go to the show. And I would literally have to tell him, stay in the room and sleep it off. Don't go to the show. Don't leave the room. Sleep it off. And I'll call and check on you in a few hours or so. And I've had to do that. There has been times where he's literally collapsed for 2 days at a time and, just over drinking himself, like pints and pints of vodka, and he was just really struggling with that. There are times when we've prayed on the phone and he would cry to me and say, the demons are chasing me. The demons are chasing me. I don't know. I just know that I don't know. And I would literally have to pray with him and, talk him through it, and it was hard. So I was really affected by what happened, not just about his death, but I kind of felt like, why didn't he call me that last time? I kind of felt like I didn't get my chance to talk to my brother again. And maybe there is something that I could have done to help him or talk him down again or give him some advice at that point. So I kind of felt a little slighted, like, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call me?
Right. Right. Well, I'm glad that we talked about it. I thought it was important because there's fans out there that never got closure on what happened to him, and it's tragic. And just like you, I wish he was still here.
Yeah.
But he's not. But I will say, may he rest in peace.
Yes. Yes. Rest in peace.